Today on Bridges, you're going to get the unique opportunity to take a look at what God is doing inside of a church in Berlin, Germany. I want to welcome you to Bridges. I'm Monica Schmelter, and I'm so glad that you could join us today. Today we're going to look at what God is doing in a church in Berlin, Germany. And joining me to talk about that is actually their siblings, brother and sister. They're worship leaders now in their church, and they moved from the States to Berlin in 2004. And Alaina, it's good to have you on Bridges today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And Andrew, it's good to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
So, when I read about your story that you two are brother and sister, and that you guys were still in school, you moved with your mom and dad from the States to Berlin, Germany. Was that in 2004, Andrew?
2004.
Okay, so tell me, take us into your house in America. You're teenagers, brother, sister, and then how does the topic of starting a church in Berlin happen?
Well, it really is a miracle story how we moved from York, Pennsylvania. That's where I was born. Alaina was born there, and my mom's from York. And we grew up there, and in 2003, my dad received an email about a ministry that was starting in Berlin, and they were looking for a pastor to really take that ministry and to continue to grow it. And when he read the email, God spoke to him that it was going to be him that was going to take over that ministry. And through a process that could only be described as confirmation after confirmation, whether that be in my life, hearing God speak to me as a 16-year-old, that God wanted me to go to Berlin and be a part of the work, and also my sister too, and my mom. As a family, we were called to Germany to go to Berlin and to build this church in Germany. And through the years, it's been just an amazing journey, but it's amazing to think back on what God had did at that time and how he spoke to us, and we really received a call. And I think that is one reason why we went, because the call was so strong.
Yeah, well, it had to be. So let me ask you this, because I want to hear about what God is doing in Berlin, but I'm thinking about you all as a family unit. You were a senior in high school, correct?
Yes.
Alaina, what grade were you in when the call comes to you?
Sixth grade.
Sixth grade.
Middle school.
Yeah, so these are tender ages. I mean, for the two of you. Was your dad already a pastor?
Yeah, so he was a pastor in a church in York as the administrative pastor there.
Okay. All right. And so, does he just come to you all and say, God spoke to me, we're to go to Berlin?
Well, actually, it was more like a discussion together, and I think that's also what was really special about when we went to visit. So we went as a family 1 year before we moved, and we saw the city, we visited the church, and we were just walking around, and we were sort of talking with each other, and we were just like, we're just called to come here. And we told our parents, we feel this call to come. And they said to us, wow, so do we. And it was just so good that all of us as a family could say that together, because we didn't feel like we were being dragged someplace and, we don't want to leave. And I met people like that in school who had traveled to Germany and, they just wanted to leave. And we didn't have that feeling. We knew we were supposed to go.
Because I think that that's miraculous. Because I've talked to, for example, on Bridges and just in life, to missionaries' kids, pastors' kids who feel like, their parents have this tremendous call, but they feel like, you're dragging me. I don't want to go. I'm kicking and screaming. I hate this. But, when I think about you, Andrew, I mean, in the 12th grade, who wants to leave their country in their senior year of high school?
Well, I think that really was one of the reasons how it was confirmed for my parents, too, about the call, and also with the timing. I think when you have a call, you have to also know the timing of that call. And you can have a very strong call on your life, and realizing when that call comes to be is also part of stepping into the call.
Yes.
And the timing of it was at that time, because it was confirmed in my life and also with Alaina. If maybe we hadn't had that call too, it could have happened a few years later when we were done school or at another time. And so I think sensing the timing of when the call is to happen is really an important part of it.
Yeah.
And that was also for my parents a confirmation that they were stepping into the destiny that God had for them, because it is a family and you have to keep your family together and a family strong. And that is so important especially in the 21st century, that
Absolutely.
we stick together as a family. And so we really have done that.
Now, was there a moment for you, Alaina, that you realized this is it?
I remember walking down my school hallway and just looking across the lockers at my friends on this side, saying, oh, hello, and just having this feeling inside of me like, I don't belong here anymore. And even though I was happy and sad also to leave friends and just, that whole life at the same time, it was so good to be able to move into what God was calling us with that feeling like, I just know I don't belong here anymore.
And that you guys could go as a family. So let's talk about Berlin and planning a church there, because you guys were just, you're kids, you were still students when you went there. I know now you're worship leaders and the church is growing and established, but what are some of the differences between a church in Berlin, say as around here in the States somewhere?
Well, I think Berlin is really a lot different than, especially in the South or someplace like that. It's a postmodern city, and even with the history of Berlin, with the Berlin Wall and the war, World War II, it has seen so many tragedies in the last 100 years that most people in America could not even imagine. Whether we have some people in our church, some older individuals that can still remember being in the war and their buildings being blown up and their parents dying from the war. And so just the history of Berlin and the people that live there, having seen so many tragedies, also is a very big dynamic. And also being a big city, people are very educated. They know a lot about many different topics. I would really say it's a city that would be similar to Rome or something in the Bible where Paul was evangelizing. And not many Christians. There's a very low percentage of people would really believe in God at all on the street and go to any kind of church at all. And so the dynamics are very different than in America.
Yeah. I was just going to ask you, are there lots of Christians there? So the answer, Alaina, is
No.
No.
There's not.
So tell me what the church experience is like there. I mean, do people know what to expect when they come to church, or?
Not really. Most of the time people come for the music, which is also why the music is a huge part of what we're doing. So people love good quality music, also gospel music. And so they'll come and just check it out, and they'll find that it's really stunning how the music fits in with the speaking as well. Like, this is relevant speaking, they're talking about me. They're talking about something that has to do with my life. And so when people come, they really don't have any idea. And we meet in a movie theater. So that's also, it's like, that surprises people. And I'll invite my friends. I'll say, hey, I'm singing. Would you like to come hear me? My church meets in a movie theater. And you know this theater. It's at Potsdamer Platz. And so we actually meet where the Berlin Wall did once stand. And another thing that makes the church really amazing is all the nations. So Berlin is a melting pot, and that's also reflected in our church. And so we have over 70 nations represented. It's amazing. We have friends from all over the world now. And so people come and they're shocked to see the diversity. It used to be a symbol of division, and now we're there, and it's people coming together, and we're unified, and we're brothers and sisters. We're family in Christ, and people are just shocked to see that, all the different nations coming together, being a family.
Yeah.
And what has that been like for you, Andrew, just to kind of watch God's plan unfold for your family?
Yes, well, I think when I first went there to Berlin, I wasn't completely sure how my personal walk and my personal life would fit into the calling of what my mom and dad were called to be. So they were called to be pastors of the church, but I didn't know how do I fit in. I never was against the church. Or something like that, but just didn't know what is my part in that. And I wanted to study in Berlin. That was always a dream that I had. But in 2006, it actually was in 2006, I was applying to get into the university in Berlin. And it's very difficult to get a spot because many people like to come to Germany, especially now, to study. And it's a lot of competition for a few spots in the university. and I wasn't accepted. And when I wasn't accepted, it was really like my life was falling apart, because that was the plan that I had and what I thought God wanted me to do. But it was through that situation that God really revealed what he wanted me to do with my life. And in 2006, in the fall of 2006, I attended a conference in London, England. It was a Hillsong conference. And while I was at that conference, God spoke to me very clearly that he brought me to Berlin to lead worship and to build a ministry that could touch the world through worship. And we grew up in the church, but I was not the kind of person that would lift my hands. And so for the first time in my life, I surrendered completely to God. And when I came back from that conference, I was changed. And from that moment on, I had a new purpose, which was really to lead worship and to build a ministry of worship. The funny thing is, after that happened, I applied again the next year to the university, and everything worked out, and I got a spot. And it was really like God was saying, if you put me first in your life and have your priorities and your call as the main thing, I will open every other door for you also.
That's right. He does good things. We've got to take a break. We want you to stay with us. When we come back, we'll hear more about what God is doing in Berlin, Germany, through the Mack family and their church.
You can purchase a copy of today's show for $15. Call us at 615-754-0039 or send a check to the address on the screen. Please mention the program number on the screen.
For more information on a guest, visit our website, ctntv.org.
Join the Bridges community on Facebook. Visit Facebook and search for Bridges with Monica. We would love to connect with you.
If you are just joining us today on Bridges, we are taking a look at what God is doing in a church in Berlin, Germany, and talking about a family that God moved from the United States of America to Berlin for the express purpose of starting a church and sharing the gospel there. And so it's so good to be talking to you, Alaina, and Andrew about all of this. And Andrew, you were sharing, before the break that you had the specific plan to get into school, and then you didn't get that spot because it's hard to be accepted. You went to a worship conference and really got a specific call there to be a worship leader.
Yes.
How has that changed your life and the ministry there in Berlin?
Well, I think when I came back from that conference and I spoke with my parents just about what had happened in my life and how I wanted to serve, and it really was, I started off by serving and just asking my parents, how can I serve? What can I do in the church to support what is already happening? And they asked me to start to organize a worship team and to start to build a team that could basically just do the Sunday services. Was the vision that we had at that time. And so it really started with me on the piano. So I was always, I grew up playing classical piano. I had lessons since I was really young. And so I loved music so much, but I would always hide behind the piano. That was what I liked to do the most, would just to be in the background, hiding behind the sheet music. I would even put it so high so no one could see me. And God really said, well, it's time to come out from behind the piano and start to lead at a different level. And it really started with just me and my sister, and we had a few other people that were involved, like a friend of mine that played the guitar. It was very simple at the time, but through the years we have really seen how God has continued to add more and more. And as we continued on that journey, God opened more doors and more doors, which led to greater things with the worship, making an impact around the world. And so it's just been an amazing journey to see how when you start with, we shouldn't be sad about small beginnings, and rather just continue where you are and see what God will do after that. And that's just been
I think
amazing.
Also the wisdom that you had, Andrew, to know that even when you got the call, to be a worship leader, that your first question to your parents was, how can I serve? Like, not, I've got this call, so let me take over and let me do this, but how can I get started on this? And Alaina, now for you, I remember that you say that you sing and that sort of thing. So were you a part of the worship team before Andrew got the specific call, or how did that work?
Yes, I remember getting off the plane and going to the church once we moved there, and I just said, I sing, so like if I can be used, I just started singing Sunday after Sunday, and I always sang. And I remember when he came back from that conference, and he really was changed, and that was inspiring to me because, he's my big brother, and I look up to him so much. And so when I saw that he was changed like that, I also started to change too. Lifting of the hands was one example. I saw a picture of myself singing, and I was like, oh no, is that really what I look like? I'm like, how am I even singing? And so I just thought, like, why can't we be more free in our worship? Because even though it's all about the heart, and that's what God is looking at the same time, we want to shine for people to see, and we want to use everything we have, our whole bodies, everything, to worship Him. And so we were on a journey, finding out about worship, and especially for me too with the singing, because singing is my complete passion. I love it so much, and I always want to sing for God. And so I also learned many things, and God has been revealing to me about power in our voices, why we want to sing with joy and with power, and just so many things we can really say we have been changed. And that's like a part of also the whole journey with the music too. We're not the same as we used to be, and that's also a good thing, because He's using us, He's changing us, He's putting new things on our hearts.
So we've been talking kind of about change and transformation and this huge call that took you from the States to Berlin, Germany, with your parents and your father leading as the pastor of the congregation. But when we look at, church in America, church in Berlin, what are some of the differences?
That's a good question. I think a lot of people do have misconceptions about it. There are big buildings in Berlin, and a lot of them are empty, or there's only a few people who come, and it's very about the ritual. We're standing, we're sitting, and so we talked a bit about the fact that things are really free in our church. So we have, people move, people clap along, the music is like a big part, and so I think the people there are really hungry, and they're searching, and they have questions. What is the church all about? Isn't it just some sort of dead religion? What is it about? And so we always talk a lot about the fact that it's a relationship, and it's about Jesus Christ, and really making it clear and simple, because also people that are coming in, they don't speak English as their mother tongue or their first language. So the church is in English because that's the common language that everybody can understand together. But keeping the message really simple and clear is really, really important in the church in Berlin.
Yeah, I would think too, Andrew, here in America, most people have been to church, or they've seen church on TV, or they know somebody that goes to church. A lot of people here, we church shop, we kind of know what we're looking for. We have an expectation of this is what church service looks like. Is it like that in Berlin?
Well, I think in Europe in general, the church, it's really non-existent, and there are not many, especially modern or what we could call just alive churches. There's a lot of dead buildings, and buildings they're basically like a shell of something that it doesn't exist anymore. And so a church like ours is very rare, and in some ways you could see that as a negative, but in other ways we really see it as a positive, that the people coming into the church, they do not have a preconceived idea about what church should be or what it should look like. And I can remember we actually had one friend of Alaina came to the church one time, and it's in a movie theater, as we said, in downtown Berlin. And we don't have any windows in the room where we meet. And some people might think, oh, well, there's no windows, there's no light. But this friend of Alaina, he came and he said, well, actually, it was so good that there's no windows and no light, because you can only focus on the message. And so you really have to think in a different way, and also change how you just think about church and what church should be like to make it relevant for people in a different culture.
Yeah, and that God is the same God. There may be differences in churches and advantages of being in this area versus that area, but still the same God, still the same Holy Spirit that draws people to Christ, and that God's work is still going forth inside of that ministry. So you guys are here for a little bit in the States, working and doing some music stuff. Let's hear a little bit about that, because in just a couple minutes we're going to let people see one of your music videos.
Yeah.
So we actually are here this time in the U.S. to promote our CD, which is called We Are Changed. And we actually were in Nashville, Tennessee 2 years ago to attend a conference here, and God really spoke to us at that time that now was the time to take steps forward in starting to produce albums that could be used around the world. And so last year, 2016, it came out in Germany. We had a big concert in Berlin, and it has just been an amazing journey to see how God has been using this CD that the songs are written by us, and how he has been using it in Berlin to really make an impact in the city.
When did you all start writing songs?
Oh, we can't even remember. It was so long ago. Since we were babies, really, since we were kids, we always played and sang together, and, you know, just in the playroom doing shows and making music. And so then once we got a bit older, we started writing songs for the church. And it's so fun to do it because we just know that that's what we were made for, because we did do that since we were little.
Yeah.
And then, like, now that we're doing it, that we're older too, it's so funny because we know God planted that in us. And it's so good to make the songs for the church because it blesses the people and it touches the people. And that's also why we want it to expand and grow, so that the songs from our hearts and from what God is doing in our church can bless other people and touch the lives.
Yes, because music, I think, touches people's hearts and lives in a way that nothing else can.
Yes.
I want to thank you, Andrew, for coming and for being on Bridges today.
Yeah, thank you so much. Glad
I
to be
want
here.
to thank you, Alaina. It's been so good to talk to you all and hear what God is doing in your church in Berlin. So we want you to stay with us here today on Bridges. We're going to give you a look at one of their music videos, and this song and the project name is called We Are Changed.
We are changed in the fire of your presence. We are changed by the power of your word. We are changed, Jesus, your name be lifted higher. We are changed. We are changed in the fire of your presence. We are changed by the power of your word. We are changed, Jesus, your Spirit rain down, Spirit rain down, Holy Spirit, pour out in power, Spirit rain down, Spirit rain down.
When I truly turned my heart to the Lord, He took every sin I ever did away from me.
Amen.
He took all the bad things I did. He took away everything that I felt like I felt short.
God is so good. God healed me, and doctors told me that disease was something that could never be cured. It can be controlled.
The start is what stops most people. You know, it's no good to have a big dream if you're not putting yourself in motion to go after that.
Is that butterfly, that excitement of the new relationship, once that goes away, what you're left with, is that something that you're okay with?
And once they start buying into the truth about themselves, then they can begin to change, that process of change in their life.
The blood of Christ is the only cure. It gets down to the root of every single thing that ails us. There's not an addiction, there's not a generational curse, there's not any root of sin. There's nothing that the blood of Jesus cannot cleanse.
Visit monicaschmelter.com to schedule Monica to speak at your event.
Prayer changes things. If you need prayer, write to the address on the screen. Call 615-754-0039 or email prayer@ctntv.org.
Log on to www.ctntv.org, where you can make a prayer request, view our program guide, see who's on Bridges, or even watch one of Monica's latest teachings. Log on to www.ctntv.org.
Join the Bridges community on Facebook. Visit Facebook and search for Bridges with Monica. We would love to connect with you.